everything that is not agentic these days is literally legacy work. It is outdated. It's not the way you solve problems today anymore. It's a shift in mindset on how to approach the problems you have in hand.
Welcome to the Talking AI podcast, where we talk AI with both experts in the field and early adopters. I'm your host, Matt Paige, and we're here to demystify AI for you so you can get some value from it. Let's talk some AI. Low code and no code was supposed to be the revolution. Drag and drop, no developers needed. But what happens when you don't even need to drag and drop anymore, when you can just describe what you want and an app appears? And what's happening to every company in that space when you got Anthropic, OpenAI, Lovable, and a dozen other vibe coding startups all coming for that same market? And today's guest sits right in the middle of that collision. He's the CIO of one of the biggest low code platforms on the planet, OutSystems. And instead of playing defense, they're actually building something really cool. Welcome to the show, Tiago.
Thank you, Matt. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this conversation because the competitive dynamics, the cool stuff that's being built, it's like this is going to be a really great one for the audience. But before we get into OutSystems specifically, I want to talk about your world as a CIO right now. I find it really interesting talking to CIOs and just how they're coping with everything. It feels like every 24 hours, something new, some new AI tool drops and everybody's losing their mind. But how are you processing the pace of change? And specifically like you personally, but then within the organization as well.
So as a joke, I tend to say that I'm probably not going to be able to know how to talk about any other topic at a point in time because I spend probably every single hour that I'm awake thinking, dealing, processing, managing this. I'm seasoned enough to have lived through the client server, web, cloud, mobile, IoT, etc., big trends. And I've never seen anything like AI in terms of the impact it can do in terms of digital transformation. So I think that on one end, it's about how do you inject, in this case of today, agents into your landscape in your company, and you embed them as part of your workforce and your processes and your operations. And at the same time, the pressure and the speed to do that at high velocity due to all the AI coding components and features that are coming on top of the platforms. So we live in a very competitive market right now, I think in general across every industry, but particularly in this tech industry. And the pressure to accelerate the path towards the outcomes you want to achieve is getting higher every single day and by the hour, I would say. So it's incredibly overwhelming. At the same time, there's a lot of human beings in the process that you need to mobilize and make sure that they are also on the same pace. So it's a crazy but fun world at the same time. But I would say that in a very concrete factor, it's, I think, like any other company, we're looking at the big company bets and literally organizing ourselves to be able to go and attack those with all our agentic capacity that we have in hands.
And I totally agree with you. I do feel like this moment is unlike anything else. What do you attribute that to? Is it the agentic nature and just the pace of change? What is it for you that feels like this is bigger than any other moment we've had before?
So I think that on one hand, it's definitely the pace of change that things are happening. So you are having improvements in all this technology over a period of time of a couple of months, 3 months, where usually it used to be years before. And you get to a point where it's already like drastic change. And then a few weeks after, something else comes along and the change is even bigger. And this is happening every day. Like you start your day, you open up all the news outlets you have in hand, and all of a sudden something drops and it's like a bomb.
Quick break in the pod. If you're listening to this podcast, chances are you've been thinking about how to actually use AI inside your business. And that's exactly why we built the AI Opportunity Finder. It's a free tool that helps you uncover high impact, tailored AI use cases based on your business, your goals, your pain points, and your industry. No fluff, no generic use cases, just real ideas that fit your business and they're ranked by ROI potential. It takes about 3 minutes to run, and it's like having your own personal AI strategist for free. If you want to try it for free, check out the link in the show notes or go to hatchworks.com/AI-opportunity-finder. Yeah.
So I think that's definitely one of the facts. The other thing is that when AI showed up about 3 years ago after ChatGPT came along, I think that we started seeing that it was going to be dramatic. And then you started seeing the impact that it's actually capable of generating. And it has just even improved since then, over and over again. For any company that needs to transform, and I don't know any that doesn't, at least not within my reach, I think that pressure is just becomes even bigger because now leadership knows that there are tools to be able to address that change. And so the pressure is very high. People need to learn fast. They need to bring these things and they need to start injecting and infusing them in the work that they do. I think
It's
that
at that
creates a
point
lot of pressure.
right there, because I agree with you. I think all leadership teams, unless they're literally living under a rock, they feel this moment. They know the gravity of this moment. But getting your teams, especially when you're in a massive organization, getting them to both embrace it, not be scared by it, and also not feel inhibited by it. I think we were chatting earlier. You mentioned something about your job's not to put on the brakes. Like, how do you think about enabling your organization? Because it's as much change management, I feel, as technology related with this
Yes,
shift.
absolutely. And I think that a good part of my time I spend on doing that. Just even today, like I spent a number of time talking to people, trying to make them understand what the end goal is, where we want, what we want to achieve. And
Mm-hmm.
so that they understand that the role is actually not to put the brakes on and to release, but being able to learn how to manage the risk. Putting the brakes or saying no, it's the easiest solution people have in their hands and where they have the biggest level of control. Opening up and knowing how to manage the risk is the hard part.
And this may tease where we're going in a bit, but building is different now, right? You have the agentic nature, the probabilistic nature of AI. So anybody can really build anything now, which doesn't necessarily mean you should, but there's also the agentic nature of stuff to where automation just completely got turned on its head in terms of what's possible. But how do you think about building things in today's age, focusing around the problem and determining, okay, should this be built? Do you have like a pattern or a framework when you're thinking about should something be built, whether it's automating some small internal process or strategy for an entire massive company?
Yeah, so I think there's a number of vectors that you can address. One of them that is very much linked to the way, let's say, computer science and more like enterprise systems have been managed over years, which is you have a problem and sometimes you always think that your job is to layer the foundations, work, like try to fix the mess, sometimes re-architect and so on. What agentic and AI is bringing on top of this today is that actually you shouldn't actually spend time doing that. You just bypass the mess and get the agents to fix and fill in the gap. So that's a huge thing because how many people have you talked to that have big legacy modernizations or when there's a merge, like merging two different systems from two different companies and things like that? Today, you just like bypass all that mess and you're able to build and layer something on top that helps you address that challenge, whatever that challenge is. And you're trying to solve for a specific problem. So that's definitely one. And then the second one is everything that is not agentic these days is literally legacy work. And
Yeah.
it is outdated. It's not the way you solve problems today anymore. You have to, it's a completely different and shift in mindset on how to approach the problems you have in hand.
Yeah, it's such a good point too, because I think that's where a lot of people get stuck is in their brain, they have, okay, this is how I do it today. I'm going to automate what I do today. But with so many people we talk to, organizations, leaders, and whatnot, you almost need to take a step back because you can do things now differently and more efficiently than you have before when you think of tasks and processes and things like that. the beauty is too, like you can actually leverage AI to help you work through that process, which I think is a meta concept that a lot of people don't do. I know like you do that. I'm curious, what's your approach when like having AI is like that thought partner going through the process and whatnot?
That's an amazing point you touched on, because I think that sometimes people lose a lot of time trying to come up with use cases. Just literally think about a problem that you need to solve. And I'm talking about in a company, it could be you have to reduce costs on a certain operations, or you want to optimize your funnel conversion or whatever, just any problem like that. And you can use AI to help you with that. You literally feed in the problem, give it all the context, and then ask, help me out, figuring here a solution, an agentic solution to go and solve this. And you'll be amazed at how it links and connects and gives you a straightforward answer that you probably were like not even at the beginning thinking about. And then you just iterate on top of that and add more and more layers. And then before you end up with a fully automated solution that has different types of agents in between, that is doing a work that was never done before. And it's completely filling in the gaps between the different steps of the process. Like, for example, sales is a good example. We always knew that coming prepared for a meeting is a good thing to do. But a lot of the time, the research work to prepare for that meeting could be very hard and deep. And a lot of people do that because they like to be prepared. But they spend hours and hours doing that, going everywhere, trying to find out more about the people. Today, you have that just like that, and as a snap. So you can build a team of agents that literally collect that briefing for you, both with internal, external, public information and whatnot, and build a deep research about that account, the people you're going to talk to, correlate their challenges with what the products we sell, and even gives you hints and tips about how to pitch that during the meeting. Now, this becomes available. We can even try to understand when your meeting is going to be based by looking at your calendar and bringing this to your inbox maybe a day or a couple of days before, a week before. But you can also get it on demand. So imagine, and when you get it on demand, it literally takes minutes, something that usually only executives had the luxury of having something like that, because they would ask their people, hey, like I'm about to meet with this customer, give me a briefing about it. And there'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people collecting data, building a slide deck for that meeting. So when you multiply the hours of those 5 people and so on, so that you have instant time saved. But when you multiply that for every single customer facing person, you're creating a power that was unbelievable before. And this is just a starting point. Never mind then helping you out through the meeting, giving you feedback after the meeting of how you managed the objections, helping to follow up after the meeting with emails and presentations and decks that you can send, and nudging you, hey, it's time to call Matt again. You left this at this point, and I've looked through your email and there's no response, so you might want to go back and tell it. But just like literally, it is able to put that person only focused on the time they spend in human interactions, literally, and just obviously and prepare and read whatever it's prepared for them. And I think that's a huge power that never existed before.
Totally. Yeah. For anybody listening, just like go back a couple minutes and just turn it on voice mode and let Tiago talk to your AI to set it up and give it the context. But like, it's funny you say that, because we built that same thing at Hatchworks AI, because it's so beautiful, because once you have the clicks from the meetings through the sales process, through delivery, just so powerful. And I think the core thing is it comes down to context. And if you are, identifying where are the opportunity areas, the one bit of advice I would give is the more context, the better.
Yeah, absolutely.
AI thrives on context. It's like the single most I'm a believer. If you provide sufficient context, there's very few things you can't do with AI.
Yeah.
But for any thoughts on that part before we jump into the...
No, that's real. What I was just going to say is, if you stop for a moment and think, let's say 5 years back, to make it even further, what we would do if we wanted to optimize that work was we would add more fields in whatever in your Salesforce, and We would put more buttons for you to press on, and we would try to collect data so we know what was happening and what you were doing. And you would have to do a lot of manual work that over the last years, and particularly with the pressure of public companies and announcing results and so on, I'm sure that if you talk to a lot of salespeople, they would tell you they started spending more time in the office preparing for those forecasts and so on than they actually spent in front of the customer.
Yeah,
So
totally.
we're trying to bring the days back of, don't worry about collecting all the data. We'll do that for you. And by the way, and we even help you be prepared. Just go out and spend time with them and just give us a note. You can even talk to this voice memo and we'll take care of it for you. So it's more than having an assistant. It's like having a coach, having having a boss that's with you all the time, giving you direction what to do. It's unbelievable.
It's funny too how quickly the new baseline's resetting. This is just becoming normal. That constantly amazes me. Heck, I saw the other day that Mark Zuckerberg is trying to build an agent to effectively do his job, which I think is just really interesting at that level. But let's shift here. I'm really curious. So you're about to launch something really significant, and by the time the airing of this podcast, it will be live in market. But for people who aren't familiar with OutSystems, set the stage. What do you do? What are you building? How are you thinking about this strategically? Because I think for a lot of our listeners, how you're approaching this strategic transformation within your own company, I think it's just a super interesting topic with all the competitiveness out there in the market right now.
We've been creating a platform for 20 years now where it started with the ability to integrate with every system in your company. It then brought the concept. It was invented or created after we were already out there. I think it was conversations between our founder and one industry analyst. They came with the concept of low code, but it literally created a very visual and graphical representation of the application or the software that you were building. And then it generated deterministically codes behind it, standard codes. And so we've been operating on these. We created massive opportunities and massive value in a lot of our customers with the ability to bring ideas to life really fast with multiplication factors or multiple factors of 4, 5, sometimes 10 times faster than before, or than using other technologies. And people were amazed. I could give you so many quotes like without systems, the business becomes the bottleneck because we deliver so fast that they can't keep up with. So things like that. So we've been doing this for a while. And obviously, as AI came along and we started the first ideas about vibe coding, it became clear that we would bring the combination of the two together. So by the time this goes live, we would already have announced what we call OutSystems agentic systems engineering, which basically is through what we call OutSystems Mentor, which literally allows you don't even have to go now and drag and drop components and configure the parameters on the side. You literally just talk your way through and tell the platform what you want to build. There's a big beauty behind this, that is you literally you generate the application using, let's say, vibe coding, but there is some magic behind, which is from the application that you generated to the code that actually runs, that part is deterministic, which means that the only part that is not deterministic is the application artifacts and components, not artifacts, the real components. And that is very precious because behind the compiler is deterministic code generation with all the security practices and all the right way of doing things. So a lot of that is protected through the OutSystems model language. But then the ability, and we're talking about either having Mentor as part of your ID, your development environment. You can also use Cloud Code as the interface towards that, which is another big place where people are today. And the beauty behind OutSystems is that in the same platform, you're able to have your infrastructure, so all your DevOps components automated. This is part of our OutSystems Developer Cloud. We have the concept of one-click publish, which means you don't have to worry about where you're going to put the application. You just literally press and it promoted through the different environments that you have. Then you have this ability to create software that integrates with all of the systems in your company. So if you're an existing company and you have a lot of information and systems, you layer data fabric on top of that, and you can see all the tables, all the fields, all the data in your existing systems that you can use operationally in an application that you build. Then you're able to build different UIs on top of that, or agentic skills. And then you can deploy that as parts of a user interface in a specific channel like Slack or WhatsApp or whatever, or you can just deploy it as an API/MCP server that you can embed somewhere else. And you do that within the same platform, everything. So one thing that people usually are not aware of is that when you build an agent, before you build an agent that does a number of things, you have to give the agent the tools. Those tools are components. Those tools are components that allows you to access data, to process information, or to do things on your behalf. So you have to build those tools first, and then you build the agent workflow. With OutSystems, you do all of that in the same platform. And now with Mentor, you can just, let's say, literally vibe code your way through it. So it's massive. It brings an acceleration that I don't think was ever seen before, with the ability to deploy your application straight away, and with access to all the systems you have, including your single sign-on in your enterprise and everything. And that's like from the get-go as soon as you start building these things.
Yeah.
That's
funny.
That's an amazing thing to achieve, to be honest.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like y'all were the OG vibe coders before vibe coding was a terminology in a sense. It's cool to see this like evolution taking place. The point I think is really interesting is you get to work within the parameters of OutSystems and everything already being connected. So it makes it a lot easier to actually build with OutSystems. And now you have this component to where you can work in this new modality, this new way of conversationally building something. And the thing that I think is like really powerful that a lot of people miss when they're building systems, workflows, apps, integrations, it's marrying the probabilistic nature of software and AI with the deterministic nature of software. Those two things married together become powerful. And I think that's what a lot of people miss, because there's things that you still need to work in a deterministic fashion. And when you enable that with the probabilistic nature of AI, it becomes really dynamic. I feel like it's the best word for it.
Yeah, I think that, by the way, we did talk about being able to show something. And actually, the whole concept I was telling you about is available here on a slide. This is exactly what I was talking about. So this is the whole platform. At the bottom, you have your kind of infrastructure component, so your governance and deployment. At the core is the OutSystems model language, OML as we call it. Your ability to integrate with everything, and that's represented here on the side between external systems, data sources, or even the different LLMs that are available out there. And then you can design UX, UI interfaces, or workflows and business logics, or just integrations and data, or skills and behaviors for agents, which you then deploy here at the top as applications through channels or programmatic endpoints, like I was mentioning. I think this is a good graphical representation of what I was talking about. This is incredibly powerful because you never leave the same place. You're always in the same platform. And it's literally like you spread the different things you're doing, combine them all together, and just publish and go. You're good to go.
That's cool. And I'm curious how you're thinking, and you're the CIO, so maybe you're not the best person to talk to, but like, I'm always curious about the user experience and the design, because users today of OutSystems are used to the kind of drag and drop modality. How do you think about marrying the speak something into existence with the existing OutSystems system. And then I feel like the other part is now educating and helping your current customer base make that transition. And it's almost like giving them that like light bulb moment of, wow, I can do this in a way more efficient way now.
One of the things that we do a lot is we like to grab a challenge or a problem and literally try to build something within minutes or hours to show the customer the power of the platform. And it's not so much how quickly you build like a simple application that excuse me, that doesn't touch anything. It's about building something that connects with different applications in the background, that goes and fetches customer data and so on and so forth, so that you can see the power of all those things combined together. But when you like, I actually take a lot of spend quite some time talking to customers. And one of the things that I do, because it's like a CIO to CIO thing,
Yeah.
is to actually bring sometimes my team and show them exactly what we build, show the internals of the product and how it looks like, and be able to demonstrate how easy those things are.
Yeah, totally. It's almost that show by doing aspect
Exactly.
of it. I'd be curious, like what, from what you can tell, like do you have a favorite thing you show off or favorite use case of OutSystems internally, whether it's in your org, in the CIO org, or throughout the rest of the organization? Are there a couple that are really interesting to you?
So I like to show things that we've done to solve particular business problems. To be honest with you, I don't spend a lot of time showing like how I made my organization more efficient in terms of development and the whole life cycle, because I'm much more focused on what kind of problems can I solve to the business,
Yeah.
and particularly those that touch important levers in terms of in the organization, either because we're selling better and more, or because we're providing better customer service or whatever. So those are the kind of the angles that I usually use. Lately, I've been spending a lot of time in working with the go-to-market team. So there's a lot of, we've developed something we call Dealmate, which is like these groups of
Cool.
agents that prepare you for your meetings and so on. So I usually show and tell that a lot, particularly because it's something we're working actively now. There's another case that I think has hit a big level of ROI, which is our customer service component, so if you're an OutSystems customer and you have a problem and you go to our support portal, you actually have an agent behind that can try and answer/solve a good part of your inquiries. And we've been able to automate that support function in 40% of their work, which is significant. And I think there's still potentially to go even further. But before AI was even present, we were never able to achieve 10%. And we gave documentation, we provided articles, we tried to figure it out what the solution was, but it didn't work But once we embedded AI, we started seeing those targets being reached like in a time frame that we'd never thought it was possible. That was actually one of the first wake up calls in terms of, wow, like AI is really unbelievable in terms of the impact it can create.
Yeah. You mentioned that like roles and jobs there a bit. I'm curious your take on this because there's recent data coming out that the number of openings for engineering roles is actually increasing. Same with product roles. I think it was Lenny from, he does a big podcast. He put out some data recently on that, which is counterintuitive, and it gets to like
I'm a big
Jevons
fan.
paradox a bit. Yeah. And it was interesting too. I heard somebody talking the other day, and I can't remember where I heard it, but they're talking about Waymos and Uber drivers and things like that. But maybe the role of the driver changes and it's not physically driving anymore, but it's almost like this concierge type of person that's doing a whole new function, and they're able to do more because this other thing is taken off their plate. But I'm curious, like your perspective, being a CIO, whether it's engineering or the broader impact of AI, how do you view that on jobs and roles and tasks and purpose with humans?
So I think that this is where the human gets really augmented. So like instead of trying to go through the big part and component of having to create everything from scratch and so on, think about just sometimes even a document or an email where you try to explain a problem. Like it just takes so much time to try to compose
Yeah.
everything. And today you can just like start with an idea and then you iterate on top of that, which means your ability to put all of your thoughts, intelligence, and knowledge and wisdom and everything is much higher. So you actually only add that. Like you don't have to start. It's almost like asking someone to write a document for me and then I'll iterate on top of that. But now you don't have to ask your assistant. Not everybody has an assistant.
Exactly.
But and that's expensive. But you can start by building these things, and it can be a document, can be a presentation, then can be an analysis that you have to correlate a lot of data and information. You just get, I think the word that comes to mind is like mega augmented in your capacity in what you do.
Mhm.
I also think that creates a sense of urgency in almost everything, because today it's like, why would I ask someone to do something in a week when I know they can do it in just a day? And so you ask, can we talk about this tomorrow? And then tomorrow you would expect a lot of things and
Yeah.
artifacts to come along for the discussion. But at the same time, when we get there, then you expect all the capacity, all the intelligence from that person. So I think, don't get me wrong, I think that very automated tasks will likely, and people that do like very automated, no thought, etc. tasks will be in a difficult position if they don't reinvent themselves.
Yeah.
But I think that I'd like to think that for the majority of the others, you can actually be a much better version of yourself. Does that make sense?
It does. And you, like the point of reinvention, like if for people that are listening, like I'd call like our AI curious audience, like there's never been an easier moment in time to start that reinvention journey, because in the past, like you literally had to go to school, learn a new trade, do all these things. But now you have, back to our point earlier when building out agentic systems, you have AI that can help you through this process. So that's such a important thing, and I just encourage everybody to do it, because I don't know about you, Tiago. If I had to go back to the old way of working, I
Oh my
would go
God.
crazy. I think about it from time to time, and I'm like, man, if I had to actually build this PowerPoint deck, write this document, I would go crazy. But it's just become the new normal, effectively. So for anybody listening, take this step and just like the biggest thing is just starting the journey, and then you don't have to know where you're going, just start.
Yeah. And actually, two things. I would go crazy and I would, I'm going to say something. I was going to say I would kill myself because my job would not be fun anymore. The reason why, I think it's also what an amazing time as a CIO to be in the world of today,
Totally.
because
Yeah.
I've done, as I said, I've done big systems implementation over months and months. Then we went agile and we started the sprint work and so on, and delivering in phases and the lean way of doing things and so on and so forth. And today, all of those things have evolved to a place like we've never seen before. The other thing is, at some point, I got tired of reiterating on the same applications over and over again for the sake of no benefit. Today, I have a tool that I can actually inject in there and see massive value coming out of that. And that is very exciting, I think, for me, for my teams, for the work that we do. It comes with a lot of pressure, but that's the fun part of it.
Yeah, yeah, and that's where I like to focus. It's like I'm giving AI all the mundane stuff so I can do the stuff I actually enjoy doing. And I feel busier than I ever have, which is a common theme from everybody I talk to. They've never felt more busy, which maybe that's just the
Correct.
nature of being in this like moment in time.
I think it
But
is.
yeah,
I think it is. And just a sidetrack if we have the time, but
yeah, go for it.
it's funny if you have friends and family or relatives and so on that sort of work in the corporate world as well, but you can see that they're not very deep to AI or very deep into AI. I think if you engage in a conversation and they tell you about what they're doing and the stuff they're solving and so on, you will realize how further ahead you are in terms of how the world has changed. And you, like,
Yeah.
sometimes I look and I'm like, oh my,
It's like the Matrix moment. I can't remember if it's the red or the blue pill, but like we're in this every day. Like we see what's going on, but for like majority of people are either not using AI period or it's not like a daily part of their work, and that's just fact, right?
it's
So for
blissful
anybody listening
denial.
again,
It's the
exactly, yeah.
blissful denial.
Yeah. But anybody listening, like the other thing I always say is like you've never been so close to the starting line of a major transformation than you will ever be in the rest of your life. So take advantage of it. Like don't feel like you're behind. But the two last things I want to hit on, and these are like pieces of advice for our leaders and CIOs. Talk to me about the competitive landscape right now because like competitors are emerging from up, down, sideways, left. How do you diagnose the signal from the noise? Because there is so much noise out there. And then there is some stuff that's like tangibly super valuable. But how do you think about that when it's coming multiple times a day? What's your approach to that and not going crazy?
Yeah. So I think that you have the noise is real. Okay. Because not only you see it, but your customers see it and they engage with you and we talk about it and so on. So the noise is real. The noise, because of this thing of it, it's so easy to bring something out, meaning that you can prototype, you can build something so fast. That also that is noise. Why? Because you I think that we are now in a place where the difficulty is not to generate something very quickly from scratch. The difficulty is to evolve that to an enterprise system.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about could be an enterprise agentic orchestration, whatever it is, but not necessarily a system like we used to think of them before. And then evolve it and maintain it. Because the
Yeah.
more you put pieces together, the more complex it becomes. And I think that a lot of the noise is coming from people that are experimenting, but it's different to experiment than to maintain, evolve, and continue and keep it up and running. So I think we need to be, and any CIO needs to be a lot of careful before making decisions based just on the wow factor of creating something very quick. So that's definitely one component. The second one is having also this thing in mind. That's why I wanted to emphasize, like, a lot of the times, like, I have tons of situations where even my CEO comes to me and says, yeah, Tiago, I thought about an agent that could do such and such. And it's most, like, all the time a great idea. When you like, okay, let's build this agent, you start with, okay, what is the agent needs to do? What systems does it need to go and access? What data does it need to analyze and so on? So you start with that thing of you need to build the tools. Sometimes the tool exists, sometimes they don't because it's a new use case. And you have to start building those tools. Then once you have the tools, you start building the agent and the agent starts analyzing the information and starts to bring some information to you and you want to interact with it and give it direction and so on. I think that there's a lot of competition that focus on particular parts of this journey that I just described. And that can also create confusion because someone sees a demo and says, yeah, like I saw that. And then you buy it. And then the day you're going to start, wow, now, but that didn't do everything. I also need to do A, B, and C, and D and behind the scenes. So I think that those are really important factors. And I'm looking at this point in time more towards enterprise than anything else.
Yeah.
So like I think CIOs and decision makers by the way, I would recommend try everything.
Totally.
But
Yeah.
be careful with the divergence because at some point you have to choose a path. But it's important to try. We're in the time that it's try Claude, try Cortex, try everything, but try OutSystems. And then by the time you realize, you'll start to understand what I'm talking about. And I think some people can be visionaries and can look into the future and understand this, but others might just be overwhelmed with how amazing it was that in an afternoon I was able to build an application.
Yeah.
Yes, but say, access this system and write data into that system and check that other data and so on. Then you will be like, oh,
Yeah, totally. Because if at the end of the day, the enterprise requires more because there's more edge cases, there's more nuance. It's the point you mentioned. It's once you get below the surface level, There's just more intricacy to it versus me vibe coding something to serve me individual person versus an entire org, because there's lots of implications. That's like the nuance we see when we work with enterprises. It's the same thing. But I'm curious, a last question I got for you. If you could give one piece of advice to a CEO, CIO, or tech leader right now, maybe they're feeling overwhelmed, they don't know what to do, where to start, all that type of stuff. What piece of advice would you give them?
The piece of advice that I would give would be try to identify the biggest problems you have to solve as a company, not your organization. Don't. I talk to a lot of CIOs that are super overwhelmed with how they're going to make their teams super productive and so on. But they are still building the same things they used to build before, except they have more powerful tools. I would say, what stage, like I usually ask a number of CIOs, what's your challenge this year? What did your boss tell you and the rest of the leadership team that your company needs to address? What is that problem? Then grab that problem, understand the operations around it, the process, the people, the technology, and frame it, and literally go and use Gemini or ChatGPT or Claude and start iterating on it by help me think of an agentic solution to solve this problem, and give it as much context as possible about your systems, your data, and so on. Like what systems you have, and where is the data here, where's the data there, and so on. And then you'd be amazed at what the outcome is, and then go and build that thing. You would be amazed at the impact you're going to generate and the level of transformation you can do for your company.
Yeah, I love that. So start big, identify the big, hairy problems, but then like actually go and, because this is the thing too, I notice with people when they're going through this experience of I have an idea, and it's like an old way of doing things. Because I used to be in product in a previous life, and going from product requirements to an engineer building the thing or a designer designing it, things change, right? There's nuance in the decisions that are made, and you can take that idea further now and you uncover more as you go. It's a great advice. Leaders should be doing that as well, in a sense.
I love what you're saying, and attached to what I said, I love something. I have a consulting background. We used to say, think big, start small, scale fast.
Oh, I like that. Well,
Exactly. So think about the big problem, start small by fixing part of that problem that you prove the solution. Use one of these kind of like approaches like a scout, where you put only a person, or a strike where you put a small team, and then scale fast. Once you prove the point, go and scale fast to the rest of the dimension of the problem. I think that would be my big advice. That's how I live every day. I'm like always looking at like, where's the problem? What problem do we need to solve?
Yeah, I love that. Tiago, thank you for talking some AI. I love getting to have these nuanced perspectives and takes from CIOs, and it's just tech leaders in general, and it's super valuable for the audience. But where can folks find you, reach out, learn more about what you're building at OutSystems?
So they can find me on LinkedIn. Also, they can find me at tiago.p.azevedo at outsystems.com. I'll be happy to chat.
Awesome. You got the email there, folks. Don't abuse it.
Yeah, it would be great. But I'm also like visibly on LinkedIn. I think my handle is Tiago B. Azevedo. So happy to connect.
Awesome. We'll link to that in the show notes. But Tiago, thank you for talking some AI.
Thank you, Matt. That was amazing. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Thanks for listening to the Talking AI podcast. If you enjoyed the show, give us a follow or subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget to leave us a review. We love those. For more info on Talking AI, visit talkingaipodcast.com. Quick break in the pod. Our State of AI 2026 report just dropped, and it breaks down what actually is changing in AI, what's hype, and what leaders need to be paying attention to this year. You can grab it right now in our show notes or at hatchworks.com.